PhD student in African American Studies at Temple University. Valerie, can you explain to me the parallels between the preaching style in the black church and African American sacred music and jazz? What are the similarities of the two?
We see in operation what is known as call and response.
Mm-hmm.
And what call and response is, there is generally a leader, either a musician or a speaker, who communicates information or communicates a message. And the audience then responds to that message.
Excited about the miracles that God does for us up in glory. Because don't you know that what God is saying, though my body may go to Ivy Hill, though my remains may go to Shelton, don't you know my spirit is with God? And that's good news today. That's good news to know that I can be absent from the body, but I can be present with the Lord.
The performance is participatory. It is unlike the European classical music experience, where there is a performance and there generally is not any affirmation until the end of the performance. If you go to a jazz club, as you know, we affirm the musicians throughout the performance.
My buddy calls it fan participation.
Yes, exactly.
Fan participation.
In the same way, in the black church experience, when the preacher or the choir or the musicians in the church setting communicate with the audience, generally you hear words of affirmation like amen or preach, words of encouragement for the preacher. And so that's where we see some similarities. We also see similarities in the area of improvisation. As you know, in jazz, a sort of a favorite part of a jazz performance is when musicians really dispense with reading music and actually freestyle play. It's sort of the climax of the performance, and it's from the soul, it's from the gut, it's from a spiritual place. We see that experience in the African American church. We call it in the vernacular hooping, but what it is, again, is the preacher dispenses with notes and really goes for it and really preaches from his or her soul, and it's really the climax of the preaching.
Art Blakey said jazz is from the creator to the musician out to the audience.
Absolutely, and that is in the African tradition, that art is never really for art's sake. It is always for a greater purpose. And that brings us to another parallel, which is the purpose. Jazz music was thought to be, bebop, for example, a 1940s response to the conditions of African Americans. Music in the African American tradition has generally been a method to speak to larger issues, to challenge norms, to encourage oppressed people. And in the same way, in the African American church experience, many of our preachers preach a liberation theology, which is designed, again, to speak truth to power, to encourage people, and to motivate